growth story. We'll play you that soundbite, but till then we've got your big ETNOW exclusive. I believe Pankaj Podar has got the top management of UltraTech with him.
Right, Nandara. Thanks so much for that. Mr. K.K. Maheshwari, MD at UltraTech Cement, is now joining us. Mr. Maheshwari, thank you so much for joining us. Could you just first start by what is your outlook for H2? Do you remain optimistic about demand going into second half? At least high single digit or maybe low double digits is what industry and UltraTech can do?
So I think, the cement industry, after a prolonged period of an extremely slow growth over 5-6 years, saw a growth about 9% in last year and about 13% in the first half of this year. And it's been led largely by the growth in infrastructure segment, where last year we saw an over 15% growth, with the major growth coming out of the segments on roads, railways, irrigation sector. And also the government's affordable housing schemes had a lot of positive impact, because despite the challenges in the construction industry arising out of RERA and other aspects of oversupply, we saw then growth of demand of almost 9%. This year the growth has been 13% in the first half, and generally when things are cruising along well, infrastructure projects are under implementation, you do find that the momentum continues. So we do hope that the second half should also see good momentum, and we should, after a very, very long time, end the year in a double-digit growth for this financial year.
Right. So, when we look at the recent development, petcoke prices are down about 15 to 20% from recent peaks. There has been gains that, cement industry will get because of changes into axle norm. Plus, diesel crude oil prices are also going down. Does that mean cost per ton can reduce substantially for the industry in H2?
So, there are two ways of looking at it. If you really see, it's very different. I think that looking at it on a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis is really not the right way to look at this. So I would say if you were to look at it from the perspective of where the prices were of these products last year, then certainly in between the prices had shot up to abnormally high levels, like you had seen crude going up from $50 to almost about in the realms of $100, which has now cooled off quite a bit. And similarly, the prices of coal, petcoke, everything had gone up, and now we are seeing some softening of the same. So if you were to look at, yes, compared to last month or the month before that, the cost pressures would be a little lower. But if you were to look on a year-to-year basis, certainly the cost pressures still persist in the industry.
Right. So how optimistic are you about price hike? There is strong demand. Whenever we are interviewing any cap goods company or any other major company,
I think my impression was that today we are going to talk more about the larger aspects of the industry instead of only focusing on these day-to-day mundane affairs. So maybe for a break we should talk about the larger affairs and the larger aspects of the industry.
Right, so let's focus on that.
Because those are far more important than, the nitty-gritties of what's happening today and what is likely to happen tomorrow in the marketplace.
Right, sir. So let's start with the demand-supply situation. Any mismatch do you see in the industry? Sir, any demand-supply situation mismatch that you're seeing in the industry?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
Sir, any demand-supply situation mismatch that you're seeing in the industry? Let's start with
clearly,
industry.
So I think clearly, the growth has come back to industry after a prolonged time, as we were discussing, and if one were to extrapolate the growth rates that have taken place in the past, then you're likely to see the demand growth continuing, because you cannot, in a growing country like India, have a prolonged period when demand growths are 4 to 5%. So clearly now, maybe it's the reversal to mean which has taken place, and hopefully the industry should see a couple of good years. Again, in terms of the cement, as you know, it doesn't travel very well beyond 300 to 500 kilometers. So we are likely to see some regions where the demand would be growing, and therefore there would be a better demand-supply equation match. At the same time, what happened was that between 2006 to 2010-11, when the industry was growing very rapidly, a lot of capacities got created, and therefore there is that overhang of overcapacity which still persists in the industry. So there is going to be a demand-supply zonal situation, and then on top of it, what happens is that you do not have an equated demand for cement all through the year. So you have certain periods when the demand growth is extremely good and certain periods when the demand growth is extremely subdued. And at the same time, what happens is that sometimes there are a lot of external factors which come into the play. For example, just the connectivity and the being able to move the material due to the extremely high load on the transportation system. And again, cement, since the clinker tends to be manufactured in certain locations where limestone is available, the connectivity plays an important role. So there are a whole lot of dynamics which come into the play every time, and it's not merely just the capacity, but the capacity of the industry to be able to reach the right segment of the customers at the right time at the right place. Therefore, sometimes the effective capacity comes down compared to the nameplate capacity. So all of those dynamics keep playing out, and certainly on the whole there is an overcapacity scenario, but with the uptick and demand, hopefully things will work themselves out over a period of time.
How do you look at that?
Right. Sir, hi, it's Karunya as well. I'm joining into the conversation. Want to understand about the consolidation that's been taking place in the country. A lot of larger players have been buying out several companies across the board. Do you think with this consolidation there could be some concerns about overcapacity going forward, or do you think there is enough demand?
So I think, when we talk about consolidation in the cement industry, I just think that one or two deals happening should not lead us to any extreme conclusions. Even if you see that today there are over 40 players in the cement industry, and even if you talk about the largest player in the cement industry, it's less than 22-23% of the total capacity of the country. So certainly, while some restructurings have taken place within the industry, it still continues to be a very fragmented industry.
Okay, Mr. Maheshwari, on that note, we would let you go. Thank you so much for taking time out to chat with us about the larger trends panning out in the cement space.
Yeah.
UltraTech cement trading at 4,019, higher by 0.4% as we speak. Moving right on, let's bring on board